For the second time, welcome to the February meeting of the Forsyth Amateur Radio Club. I'm glad to see everybody here this evening. We've got some fairly important business to discuss, and we've got a really good program tonight, so hopefully everybody will enjoy that. We're going to start out the evening with introductions like we always do. Obviously, I'm Tim, AG4RZ, and from there we'll go to
John, WS4NC.
I'm Henry, W2DZO.
Mike, W4VLJ.
Les, KK4JYZ.
Steve, WA3RTC.
Maine, KC4WSK.
I'm Jeff, KK4MOV.
David, KK4GAF.
Charlie, W4GMR.
Bob, K4KEU.
Ed, a 4XC.
Inside rope.
Gary, WA4BMC.
Bill, N4WWS.
Doc, QIZ. David, K4.
KC4X. Jumping, Doc.
I'm sorry.
Lid.
That would be me.
You.
Nick, KF4ML.
All right.
Jim, W4US.
Ben, K4GHS.
Fred, WB4QXG.
David, KJ4OIL.
John, 0KTY.
Bill, W4MTHL.
Harold, KK4OJK. Today is the first day.
Congratulations.
Gerald, KK4OJJ.
Mike, N4VE.
Raymond, WX5 AAA.
On camera. KD4J said so. Bill.
KC2MEI, Jennifer.
Gene, WB4MSG.
Stewart, KK4MOW.
Woody, KF4BLQ.
Matt, I'm a visitor.
Well,
Terry, AK4D, this is my son-in-law.
Jim, WA4NOG.
Terry, W84ZK.
Gary, K4GEW.
Brad, K4SBI.
Bill, WD4LSS. My wife, Tracy. Bruce, WB4LCM.
Hey, visiting.
Impromptu Beatles performance here. All right, with that, yeah, situations, right? We'll go ahead and get into the business portion. If you don't hear a motion regarding minutes, I guess we'll force Don to read them.
I move that we accept.
I think you should read it.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All right, so carried. That's easy enough. Unfortunately, we don't have a representative from the technical committee here tonight. He's out of town with some family issues, but as he's so famous for saying, as of about an hour ago, the repeaters were working, so, and that's all we know about that, so we should be in good shape. And I guess if Henry's in a position where he wants to talk about money, we'll throw it over to him.
We're sitting at, well, we've got a lot of stuff coming in tonight, but right now we're at $2794.98. Our next big chunk of change that we have to pay out goes to insurance in May, so we have a couple months to not spend money. And if you have dues, bring them to me. If not, continue to mail them in, that's fine. And while I got the floor real quick, Sunday, February 24th is the North Carolina QSO Party. It's now sponsored by the Raleigh Amateur Radio Society. The time is from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. That's a 2-hour time change from the previous 10 years when we were running the show. And but they've made a lot of exciting changes, so you can see all that stuff on their website. Like I said, it's if you go to the rars.org, I think you can see the website. But anyway, that's Sunday, February 24th.
Thank you. Jim, you want to fill us in on Aries goodies?
Sure. Get up your word.
He's going to come back up this way, so.
Everybody, you can nail me with the pen. Okay, Aries situation. Our first public service event of the year is this coming Saturday. The Pilot Mountain Payback, which is a marathon and half marathon taking place simultaneously in Pilot Mountain State Park, hence the name of it. The marathoners will run the whole thing from the river section, top of the hill, back down. The half marathoners will go from the river section to through the corridor to the beginning of the mountain section and turn around at that point. We're in good shape for volunteers. The only slot that's left at this point, it would be great to have a net control station Saturday afternoon from noon till, they say they're going to they will run till 1600, but that's actually when the last aid station closes down. There's no one left to talk to, so we'll shut the net off at that point. And last year that was at 1500. So if anybody's interested in taking net control, it'll probably be pretty casual. There's not a whole lot of traffic in the afternoon because most of the runners, the serious people, will probably be done well before 2 o'clock. If you're interested, as I said in the newsletter, in Aries or thinking about it and would like to just eavesdrop and see what's going on in one of our nets, I'd suggest listening to 547 Saturday morning between 9 and noon. That's when the runners will start at 9, and between then and noon we'll probably have most of our action. Things coming up, the next thing that may happen will be, well, the event will happen. There will be a 5K zombie walk and shuffle on the Wake Forest campus on April 27th. This is put on by Emergency Management. Has anybody seen one of these before? Okay. When I first heard of it, I thought normal 5K, but what it actually is, the contestants will have, like touch football, they'll have strings on them, ribbons. Those are your brains. The zombies will be dressed in torn clothes and fake blood, and as you walk the course, they shuffle up behind you, and if they grab your brains, you're out. So this should be an interesting event. Ken Hoagland, KG4FGC, who is our representative with the community organizations active in disaster, has volunteered or suggested to Emergency Management that we'd be happy to provide communications. We're still waiting for a response. So we'll keep you posted on that as it develops. Any questions about Aries or about the event this Saturday? Yes, sir.
I tried to pull my attachment out, and I couldn't pull my attachment out. Do you have an extra one for an extra schedule?
The whole thing?
Where people are going to be?
The previous one or just tonight's? Or just the one for radio?
Just for this weekend.
I'll give you mine on the way out.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else?
Jim?
Yes.
Are tests still required for Aries?
No. Good question. For work with public service or like events like this, or for situations in which a government agency is not involved, anybody, any licensed ham is welcome to participate. If a government agency is involved, then both FEMA and their subsidiaries and our state Aries want people to have 4 basic NIMS courses, 100, 200, 700, 800, in order to take part in something that's under government control, or, according to the state guys, if you're working in a deployment outside your home county. Now, this is outside our home county, but it's a public service rather than anything that requires NIMS. Since I mentioned them, these NIMS courses are really not that bad. They're online courses, they're free. It takes maybe a couple of hours per each. Read through the course, watch the video, online, watch the videos, take the test, and get your certificate. Anything else? It's good to see a lot of people here tonight. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Jim. All right, I guess before we go into the meat of the business, I'll ask if there's any new business anybody wants to bring.
Tim.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Mike had a class, recently, and, they were supposed to test on today.
Right.
And they did not get to, and a lot of those went Saturday, passed, and some of them passed their
General.
tech and their general. And I think it'd be in the club's interest to maybe induct these people into the club like we do if they test you. I just think it'd be a good.
Is that a motion?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Thank you for that, Jerry. Don, you got something you want to talk about?
Everybody should, in here, should have gotten a newsletter this month. If you didn't, see me. I mailed out a massive stack of them. For every person that gets our newsletter and stuff, this is a page. I goofed this up and made a boo-boo, but that's how thick the database is for the club. It's a pain for me to keep this up to date. If your email changes, I really need to know. You need to let me know. I get some bounces. And if you fill these out, please return them to Henry first and let him do his side, and then he'll forward them on to me. I didn't really expound on this graph that was on the front of the newsletter. If you didn't get one, there's about 10 up here. But if you notice, this is the number of hams in North Carolina, and it starts down around 18,000 and goes up to right at 18,750, and then starts dropping off because there were people dying off, basically. But right here's where no code started. I didn't point that out in the newsletter, and if you notice, we're growing and growing very rapidly. If you want your membership free, go take a test at one of our exams. We'll cover the ones on Saturday. I don't know where they did them. But for anybody that comes and takes an FCC exam, the technician exam, the club makes you a member automatically. All you have to do is fill out the form, and that covers the first year. If it's after September 1st, we just make it the next year, because all dues expire in December. If you want, and because some people came to take a general and they weren't club members, we extended this. If you take a test, you're not a member, and your dues aren't paid, and you take that test and pass it for general and extra, we also give you that year's dues. So you can get 2 years just for upgrading to extra. We do that to encourage everybody to be active and actually get their extra.
Say that again. So if we upgrade to extra,
if you upgrade, well, you can only do this. This only works during the year. So you do it from tech to general. We'll cover you that year.
I know, but I'm working on my extra, so why
then sorry.
But you're paid already. No
sorry.
refunds.
No refunds.
You get senior citizen discount anyway.
Yeah, $12. And we, because this has gotten so big, we just can't mail newsletters anymore. It's just phenomenally expensive. It costs postage and printing. We may have an option I learned about tonight where we could do that differently. But for now, if you do not have internet access, and some of our older members don't, I'll mail you a newsletter. But for everybody else, I prefer it to go by email. It's just a massive job, and it's just too much. So that's all.
Thank you, Don. All right, a couple things that we wanted to touch on from the board meeting on the 21st of January that were motions that were made. I'm going to go through these in no particular order for those of you who read that part of the newsletter. One of the things that was mentioned, motion was made by Don and seconded by John, was the family membership. There's been a change to that. If you are a member of the club, like take Gene for example, his wife is also a ham. They only pay one membership now to cover all the licensed hams in the family, so be aware of that.
And if you paid more than that this year, you'll get a receipt for a donation.
See Henry. But keep that in mind. We got to thinking about it. That's kind of we ought to do that, because a lot of times what happens is you look around the room here, the majority of the members are typically the heads of the household, and their spouse may be licensed through some arm twisting, like may have been the case in my mother-in-law's license. So she gets her membership for free. So one of the other things that I wanted to touch on, let's see, was when we talked about getting the K3s, we went ahead and bought the one, got it built. If you guys remember back last year when we originally started talking about that, Gene brought in his antenna switches, the fully electronic, no touching required, radio operated band selectable antenna switches. We made a motion at the board meeting and voted unanimously to purchase one. And the reason for that is that's a protection for the investment of the K3. Everybody got a chance that was here last month to see that radio and see how nice it is. The more we talked about it, the more we realized that we don't get a chance to get in this room and operate as much as we want to. And it's going to help everybody who goes in here not to have to think about, well, I got to do this, this, and this to change bands. Now you'll be able to just change bands on the radio and the antenna selection will be automatic and it'll be done. That won't be purchased for a little while because, like Henry said, we've got to put a little bit of money back in the treasury. So we've got insurance and whatnot coming up, but that is on the plan for this year. So I guess the big one was the field day discussion. We've got an option, an opportunity, I guess would be a better way of putting it, to have field day here this year and use that shack, which is something that we haven't done before. ARRL has added a class just for that. And we're fortunate enough to have a facility to do that at, and through much discussion at the board meeting, we decided that we wanted to have that option. And so what we need to do tonight, by show of hands, is vote on whether we want to do field day at Hobby Park or if we want to do field day here. So we did go ahead, because of the time constraints with the reservations for Hobby Park, we also voted to go ahead and pay for that reservation fee. So just in the interest of being transparent to you guys, we did reserve the park. The reason for that is, even if we don't hold it there, we want to keep our name on those books just in case, so we don't lose it for next year. So if we hold it here, we can do this one time, prove that it works, and we can go right back to the park. And that's the kind of the intent. But we want to get everybody's input about that and see kind of what everybody thinks.
I was going to say, to piggyback on what Tim said, that park, at that time, if we didn't have the check-in, it will be reserved. It'll go that fast.
Go fast.
They won't take the reservation until January. We're there January 2nd, throwing money at it. If we don't, somebody will scoop it up. So that's why we did what we did.
Right.
And they will have first dibs on the following years.
Right.
So I guess the question is,
Well, yeah, and the big discussion too was that having it here would kind of prove out all our stuff here.
Right.
We will be able to set tents up and stations up out in the parking lot also, so it won't be like, this one radio is it.
Yeah.
We did get approval from the Red Cross to hold this event here, and they are real excited about this. So this is going to be a pretty big deal.
For those of you that were at field day last year, you may remember that Hugh came out from the Red Cross director here in this building. He came out to the site, spent some time with us, and kind of got a chance to see us in action. And he made the comment a couple of times that it was different than what he was used to. He came from another Red Cross somewhere else, and their interaction with their local radio club was completely different. I'll leave it at that. He was impressed. And he actually put the bug in our ear about, if we ever wanted to do an operation here. So that was kind of what led us to start thinking about it, that and ARRL opening that category up. So Henry did check and see about the availability of the building and the rooms for that weekend. We obviously will have the shack, we'll have this room, and we'll have the room back there that we've used for a testing room at times, so we've got plenty of space. We would be able to do the meal like we always do. The difference is this is air conditioned. If it rains, we're dry. There's some operational advantages to being in this building versus being out there and trying to cover everything up and get everything secured and not worry about lightning strikes. So, yeah, Woody.
Have you thought about doing a public address or information and getting this out?
Once we make a decision on where it's going to be, that's the next step. Is to, if we're going to do it here, then we're going to push hard.
Well, you got to push that hard.
Right. So.
And the other thing too is it allows us for the next the amount of effort that went into last year's with Gene running that, and getting our cables redone and getting all this stuff taken care of. Now we can spend the next 4 months or 5 months getting our station, tightening the cables, climbing the towers, getting coax done, redoing some of the dressing. I mean, taking care of this space. Mm-hmm. And once that's done, that's something we need to do. And so it's going to be a great opportunity to do that.
Now, what do you anticipate? What class you anticipate us being in?
The class will be the Foxtrot class F. That's the disaster or the EOC.
Well, how many transfers?
The number, it's up to
however many we can bring in.
Depends what we want to do.
We got the antennas for that?
Well, we've got We
Got
got
one here, right?
the antennas that we had from last year, and we have, that we can set up
Or
outside. We
mounted.
also have the stuff up on the roof, and, you know, with the filtering and all, we should be able to use several of those too. So-
And the trailer.
Plus the
And the
trailer.
trailer.
So, this is gonna be something to see.
We can go one of two ways. We could go and do a massive all-out effort here, like we did at Hobby Park last year, if we want to. Or if we decide we can scale back a little bit, use the equipment that we have on the roof, use the trailer, and maybe throw a dipole up and do a slightly smaller operation. A lot of that obviously is going to depend on how much support we get, because it's, you know, if you guys remember from last year that were there, it was a lot of work to get that set up. I think it paid off big, and we had a great time, but there was a lot of prep work that went in. Gene worked for several months getting antennas ready. We had to get over there early to get everything put up. He went over the night before and shot lines up. It wouldn't be quite as involved here, but we'd still have quite a bit to do. But the advantage is we've got antennas on the roof that we can hook up to at 2 p.m. and get on the air and go, and not have to be waiting to get that last antenna up before we start running. So there's, you know, there's some operational advantages, like I said. And, you know, if we want to run 10 stations, then if we can get 10 antennas out there that we can get separation on and get filters on, then by gosh, we can do it. If we want to run 3, we go in there and sit down and run, and, you know, we can play around with maybe bringing the display for, you know, if somebody can sweet top Gene into the PAN adapter, we can shoot the display on one of the K3s out here. We can also link network right log out here and put a display up on a projector and show current scores and all that sort of stuff, just like we do when we run a big contest. So, you know, it wouldn't be like everybody's got to cram in there, or, you know, we could spread it out and have that option for more room. Yes, sir, Van.
You got complete buy-in from the Red Cross, running all these cables, and
Do I what?
you have complete buy-in by Red Cross, to be able to
Absolutely.
use the facility for
Yep.
2 days and all
Oh,
that.
yes, they're fully aware of what it's going to take.
They're probably gonna do an effort on top of it. So they can do some sort of PR event. A blood drive would be absolutely brilliant, and, you know, they can tie that in somehow, get people here and then walk them right into the building next door. I mean, that'd be a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
We could do part of this outside too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to
display those stations. that we
Right.
work so
That's
far.
one of
Put a
the
monitor
things
out
that.
front there and let them
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this could be a real fun show.
Yeah.
I mean, for the public too.
So I guess then the next thing is, I guess we need to make a motion to vote.
I'll make a motion that we have the field day for this upcoming year here at the Red Cross.
Anybody second that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Overruled. Looks like we're gonna do field day here.
I like it outside.
Well, now here's the
We'll be
opportunity.
outside, don't worry.
You can, if you want to set up a small station at Hobby Park, since we've got that reserved, you've got that ability.
Still
All yours.
I'm gonna have my backyard.
See?
We're not
Yeah.
planning on just having one inside.
Yeah, we sublet it.
We're planning on setting 4 or 5 stations up outside.
Yeah, we're gonna be
That's
outside.
what we hope for, so, you know, show the public, the stuff outside, so I can see it being, I don't know that we'll end up with as many stations as we had at Hobby Park, but,
I'm
we
thinking
can
a
probably
6,
come close to
you know,
it.
5 or a 6 transmitter station might work good, because we can pull, you know, I can clean the trailer out and get it set back up for radio stuff.
And there's no power.
The same thing.
There's no power issue either.
Right.
We run off
mains,
mains,
so we don't have to worry about generators.
Talking out tents and everything.
The only deal is
We
with
are
that,
here.
the only deal with that class, we have to fire up the generator.
We have to test it.
And prove that it's in good working order.
Right.
Turn it off, plug into the mains and go.
And go, yep.
You could probably get some coverage next door here, probably.
Well,
That's-
we'd like to try that.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons we were talking about having it here. So, now that we've decided to have it here, Hobby Park that we've paid for and reserved, we're going to need to use that for a little while during the weekend. If anybody who normally goes and sets up somewhere and you know, does a field day operation somewhere else would like to utilize that space, see one of the board members. We're not asking for a full-on 24-hour effort. If you want to go over there at, you know, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, set up some antennas and run for a couple of hours and then go home and then come back on Sunday, but somebody needs to be there running radio. If nobody wants to do it, we'll figure it out amongst us. If I have to go over there for a few hours and do it, I'll do it, but we need to get somebody over there. That way, if the city comes out there, if the parks guys come out there, they don't go back and tell their boss, hey, you know, those radio guys weren't even out there this weekend. You know, we want to have somebody there for a little while so we can say, yes, we were there, yes, we did use it, just so we don't run into any issues. So when we go back out there next year, we're good to go and we get that reservation again.
Take pictures?
Take pictures, yeah. So if anybody's interested in doing that for a little while, don't want to do a full-on effort and just want to go play, that's fine. Just see one of us and we'll get that worked out. So.
Or any other organization.
Yeah, or any other organization that might want to.
Ham radio.
Yeah. So, but the caveat to it is, it's ours. This is a one-time loaner offer. You know, we reserve all rights to that spot because we work pretty hard to get that set up and get the layout right. So do this to prove this out, and then we can go back out there if everybody wants to. And I think, unless I've missed anything, those were the big things we covered at the board meeting that we needed to talk about. Yeah. Hamfest, yes, that's the other thing. We did talk about the Hamfest. Everybody was at the January Hamfest. You know how nice it is to go out there and have the tailgate and then walk a few steps and go into the cafeteria and have all the dealer stuff inside. We have, let me make sure I do this right. We made a motion and it was seconded to hold all 3 Hamfests in the dining hall because the workload is a lot less. It's a lot shorter of a walk. You don't get lost going around the building. And there was also some discussion about the flea market space where we're parking up in that upper parking lot now, turning that back into the flea market and parking in the lower section. We think that'd be a really good change to make because it gives you a little more area and it's flatter up there. You don't have to worry about your tables tilting, propping stuff up and whatnot. Did we decide on doing the October Hamfest in the dining hall?
Yeah, we didn't make any decisions on that, but
okay.
But we did go ahead and say for the June event,
yeah,
and we can publish that. But one of the discussions was whether we do 3 events. And if you're new to the club, we do 3 Hamfests. Most clubs do 1. And we do 3, and the question was, do we cut one out? Do we split them up between June and January? What's our best one? What's our least attended one? And it was just, we had discussion. We didn't, that kind of thing. Decision would be made by by the membership. But we started talking about that, and that's something we can look at down the line. But I think for the June thing, the biggest complaints we're getting were people didn't want to walk all the way to the gym. They liked where it was, and they liked just walking right in there. Mm-hmm. There were several tailgating folks who said that they would much rather have their tailgate spot on the big flat section, so we can make that adjustment. But it's cheaper, considerably cheaper, to do it in the dining hall than it is to take that big gym. And that's the name of the game. We're trying to raise funds, and we don't want to go the whole. If we go in, if we're not hurting if we have a terrible weather problem. If we have a terrible weather problem and we've rented that gym, we're out a bunch of money. Yeah. So whether we have it or not.
Just something to keep in mind. We'll address the 3 Hamfest things at a later date, but it's again the workload issue of having 3 a year it's a lot. It'll be less doing it in the smaller facility, but there's still a whole lot of behind the scenes work that has to go on. So.
3 versus 2.
We can. You want to make a motion?
No, I'm just saying we do a straw vote.
Okay.
It isn't a final decision.
Okay. Oh, we just for fun.
Yeah. All right. Who wants to do 3 a year? Just for John.
Just for fun.
Yeah, just for fun.
Just
raise to kind of get an idea.
All right. So that's considerable.
Okay.
That's
cool. 2.
I saw more than
okay.
2. I could.
Yeah, I'm all in for 2. That's a lot of work.
We do 9.
Raven volunteers to be Hamfest chairman for the next 9 Hamfests.
So we have 11. 12. Do we have a 12? Do we have a 12? 12.
Sold to Raven. All right. Any other business? Anything anybody wants to bring up?
I want to bring up one thing.
Go ahead, Mike.
I just, completed this last tech class and had 4 students, and I sent them all over to Greensboro since Dale's issue came up. They all passed, and we got 2 of the newest hams in the room with us tonight. Gerald Kinlaw, KK4 OJJ, and then Harold Richardson, KK4 OJK. So,
all right.
And actually, these guys didn't get their technician. They also got their general. So they did a little extra studying. I didn't know about that part. But they did well, and we had 2 techs come out of it and 2 generals. So make them feel welcome. And
y'all have a good teacher. Was your teacher good?
Yeah. I gave you 5 after that.
Just trying to help you out.
And since they did it in Greensboro, I won't have the information, but if they want to join, I need forms.
Yeah, they need to fill them out with. If you, yeah.
Just, these are a boo-boo. Just draw through the names that are on there. I didn't print any blank ones.
Anything else? We'll get to the meat of the meeting. I'll hand it over to Don, and Don's going to educate us tonight, and as well as Gene and Doc, and they're going to hopefully teach us all something that we don't know about antennas.
Okay. Hey, let's turn the lights out, Steve, if you would, on right up here in front. I want to talk about SWR, Q, and antennas. Q is something that I really got interested in a long time ago, and I found it to be very confusing. And mathematically, it can get fairly intense. There was a great article this month in QST, and he tried to summarize it. What was his name? I'll get to that in a second. Kai somebody, KP4 somewhere. And he did a great job, but he really didn't quite make the point that I think he hoped to. There's a background to it, and if you go on QST online and look, you'll see the backup document, but it is fairly mathematical. I printed out a few copies up here. Tonight, and I apologize because I'm going to go really fast and take no prisoners. I'm going to try and do this in like 10 minutes. And we're covering 4 semesters. So there's no hope. So you can't keep up. What is SWR? And I'm not going to spend a very long time on that because that's going to be Gene and Doug. It's just a way of telling how much power is actually going to your antenna. The second thing here, we could spend all night and talk about this, but maximum power gets transferred into that antenna when the antenna impedance is equal to the radio, which is generally 50 ohms. And usually with a 50 ohm transmitter and a 50 ohm antenna, we'll get an SWR of 1.01 to 1. It never gets exactly equal. It's hidden in here, but there's some logarithmic functions that you don't really see. When you get down to 1.01 to 1, that is a roughly 1,000th of the power is not being coupled to the antenna. And if you're only wasting 1,000th, then that's fairly efficient. So you're not going to get much better than that. I do have lab equipment, and I have calibration standards to set up, and the very best I can get is 1.001 to 1, which is a reflection loss of 60 dB. It absolutely astonishes me that Gene's little toy up here will do almost that. So, and I have $10,000 in a system that cost $100,000 when it was new. So, and he has 500 or 600. So it's an amazing little gizmo. SWR, really, it's just for our purposes here. It's the ratio of impedances. 50 ohm antenna, and I'm not getting into X of C and X and R and all that. If you have 50 ohm antenna, you got a 1-to-1 SWR. If it's a 100 ohm antenna, it's 2-to-1 SWR. If it's 25 ohms, the ratio's still 2-to-1, 25 to 50, so that's 2-to-1. If it's 200 ohms, that's 4-to-1. There's some magic that goes on here that is really, really subtle. And I want to share, what I'm really going to try and share tonight is some of the magic. I want to stress this, because I could spend all night talking about it, but the maximum power transfers when we get the everything coupled into the antenna and the impedances are equal. This is not good. My pictures did not transfer.
You're standing video.
That's not good. Okay. Imagine, if you will, there's a puddle up here, and down below there we get a drop of water into it. What you're looking at in SWR, there's a reflection that goes out, that ripples out, and when it hits the edge of the bucket, that bucket does not absorb any of that power. And you'll see a wave come back in. And you've seen these reflections. And I'm really upset on this because I'm going to be missing a lot of my stuff. Hey, it's over here. We're going to trade computers. There we go. Amazing. Please come back.
Don, if you need some IT support.
I do. There we go. Okay. That's fine. We're back here. I'm not going to get into this part really deeply right here because this is kind of what Gene's going to cover. But you have these waves that go out and waves that bounce back when the power is not absorbed. And we're really just looking at the ratio of those. You'll hear the term VSWR, and that's really because we're measuring voltage here. And it's a subtle thing, and just don't worry about it. It's the same thing we're dealing with. This is the usual bridge that's used for measuring SWR, and the transmitter's here, the antenna's here, and magically that wave that travels to the antenna gets coupled into that part, and the wave that gets reflected back gets coupled into that part. Power that is not absorbed by the antenna is burned somewhere as heat. And usually that's in the transmitter, but it can be in a lot of other places. And there is a really complicated thing that I really can't get into tonight, but Maxwell's equation and all that. There's this concept, what's called the near field. And he mentions it briefly in his QST article, which is quite good. But you get coupling into trees, houses, buildings, power lines, and some of that coupling is being radiated as loss. And this is where the Q is going to come in later. And this is the article that was in this month. He's primarily talking in the article about small high Q loops that are very tiny. And he had one quote, and I love it. You can shrink the antenna as much as you want, but nature still demands her full space for the stored energy. And stored energy is a little bit magic. Well, I'm going to get into that. We got to cover actually a lot of theory, and I'm going to simplify it a lot. The concept of Q goes back to people at Bell Labs, and it started in 1914. And these are Q standards. I'll pass these around if you want to look at them. Used to have nearly a full set of these, but it really isn't something I need. There's like 50 of them, and I've sold them all off. It can get very complicated, and some of the things that we call Q in ham radio are not exactly numerically equal to what this guy was talking about, but it generally doesn't matter. Let's talk about a capacitor. A capacitor is very much like an air tank. Voltage is very much like the pressure. Current is the flow of electrons. And here I've got a generator that switches up to some positive voltage, and then it switches down to some negative voltage, or zero voltage. And it's very important to note that current can flow through there. So it discharges that capacitor. And when you first switch this on, it's like hooking an air tank or a tire, an empty tire, up to an air hose, and you'll hear the pressure, you'll hear the air rush in. And as the pressure begins to equalize, they come up and match each other. This is the rush of air. And when you go fill up your tire with the air tank, it's going in the other direction. it's not really a complicated thing, but it can get tedious mathematically. And I'm not going to get into this, but there's stuff that we could really play with here in terms of time constants. And those who've been in this room in some of my classes, I made their life miserable covering little circuits of clampers and clippers and stuff and time constants, trying to get them to understand certain points. You also, X sub C calculations, we're not going to get into that. Here's where we're starting some magic. We got current and voltage in an inductor. Something happened to my resistor up there. I think it stubbed its toe. We won't worry about that.
It's a square wave resistor.
When we were back on the capacitor, I think one point that I want to make because of one particular person in here. The current starts before the voltage in a capacitor. You have current flow, then the voltage comes up. And we abbreviate that by ICE, current ICE. In an inductor, when we have that little square wave generator, it goes up to a positive voltage and then goes down to 0, we get waveforms that look like this. And the voltage up there at top, notice it jumps up immediately. When that generator goes to some positive voltage, there's no current flowing through the resistor because the magnetic field on that inductor has to build up. And as it builds up, it crosses the windings of the coil, and you have a coil in a moving magnetic field and it induces a current. That current's running in the other direction. So it forces that current to come up slowly. And the voltage goes up high. And we have the voltage rising for the current. Now I want to get to some magic. Let's say we have a relay. And we have a switch up here, and we throw that switch up to that top position, and it takes a while for the current to build up. When you open that switch, physics says that current is going to continue to flow. The stun here is that we have suddenly changed time to very short. That current does continue to flow, and it's a movement of electrons. It's got to go somewhere. And what's going to happen is there's going to be an arc up there at that switch, and it's going to jump across. If you are dumb enough to put your hands across there, you're going to get bit. It will go to, that inductor will force that voltage to go to whatever level it has to make that current flow. And for an inch, it's about 10,000 volts. But, you know, we're dealing with a much smaller space. It's still going to be a high voltage. I'd cover this in classes and somebody'd say, no, it can't possibly go to that big voltage. And that's when I'd pull out the inductor with wires that had been stripped down and a 12-volt battery. Here, hold on to this and connect it to the battery. Now, as long as you don't release it from the battery, you're okay. When you do, you're going to get some excitement. I have put together as many as 30 people. One person on one end, we all hold hands, we touch it, everybody gets the jolt. And the funny part is the people that are nervous about it and sweaty, they have much lower resistance, so there's less voltage across them. It does work. It's magic. We can go down, you know, and go look down even into quantum theory and all of this about why this happens. This still just amazes me. It's absolutely magic. And the reason we put diodes across relays, notice when the switch goes, the diode is wired so there's no current flow. But when you open that switch, there's current flowing through that diode. That's the reverse voltage. And what it does is keep from burning up contacts of the relay, or the switch, excuse me. And on an AC circuit, they call them snubber networks. It can be just a capacitor. But that's not really what I want to get into. Let's get to RF. We put a sine wave in there, a changing waveform. And after everything stabilizes, we can look at the voltage across the capacitor at the top and the voltage across the resistor, which is really the current in the circuit. And you'll see that the current rises before the voltage does. And down here in the inductor, the voltage rises before the current does. They're 90 degrees out of phase. And that, if you've been through any schools, they'll talk about Eli the Iceman. Some people like that so much they named their son Eli. Let's put them together and make a resonant circuit. And I'm skipping a lot of math here. I think most people understand, you know, the 1 over 2 pi square root of LC. You've read that stuff. And when you put these two together, that collapsing magnetic field, and there is a corresponding static field in the capacitor that does a similar thing, an inverse thing. If you thump a resonant circuit, it's going to ring for a while. That is the function, that is what Q is talking about. And I don't want to get ahead of myself here. Everything has Q. Okay, right there. The interesting thing about this resonant circuit, and I've done another thing here, the current in that inductor is when, let's say it's reached its peak and it starts collapsing. At that point, it starts putting current back in the capacitor, which is going to start storing it at its static field. And then it's going to reach the peak voltage across the capacitor, and then that starts to collapse and starts running back into the inductor. That's what's running back and forth, is that current. When we have a transmitter hooked to an antenna, all it's really doing, the antenna has a certain amount of Q. What the power that's being coupled in there is replacing the energy that's being dissipated, either by being radiated, which I'm showing a resistor here, or it ends up in losses somewhere. Everything has a Q. Wine glasses, you know, you've done the thing, I hope. A brick, Q's very low on a brick. It's not that much. And this gets complicated, and that's, I don't want to get in, I don't want to discourage you from looking into this. But this, next to the bottom down here, in terms of power loss, the maximum energy, we store energy in that field, and it gets coupled in what's called the near field on an antenna. And some of that gets wasted in trees, in balance, in antenna tuners and stuff. But mostly, hopefully, we hope most of it gets radiated. There's also, here's two other forms of Q. The power loss per cycle, total of the resistive losses plus what gets radiated. A lot of, if you look into a lot of ham books, they will talk about 2-to-1 SWR and refer to that as the bandwidth. The actual mathematical exact is a 2.62 SWR. And if the guy hadn't done his article this month in QST, I probably would not have mentioned this, because it generally goes over everybody's head, and it really doesn't matter. Usually we look on antennas for 2-to-1 SWR, because that's where the output starts shutting down. That inductive field in particular, if you have a mismatched antenna on your radio, in the worst case is we'll take a 2-meter rig, and the early ones, if you keyed it up without an antenna, there was this huge inductive field that came back and put a very, very high voltage across the output of the transmitter in the tune circuit. And it would generally blow the early RF transistor. That was a real problem in terms of of getting transistors that would tolerate that. So you're going to see different things in books. They'll talk about 6 dB. It's actually 7 dB. It is the center frequency. This is the equation down in the bottom. I should have put it as the center frequency divided by the upper minus the lower. It's mathematically the same thing. This is an area that I wanted to talk about briefly. On AM broadcast antennas, you will see these towers, and they're really big, and they're feeding them from the bottom. And the reason they're really, really big is to try and get that Q down. They'll be 3 feet on the side. Some stations, and WAIR is one after Weather took theirs down, they put up a RON 25 tower. The interesting thing about that is that the Q, the bandwidth of that is so narrow that when you get up to about 6 kilohertz, which is the modulation, the SWR is like 3 to 1. So they don't transmit as much, and they sound kind of muddy, which is why a lot of AM stations go to just talk instead of music. One way we fix that bandwidth, and I'm not going to get into it, but we put top hats up there, or you can make it wider. John Kempe built an antenna for 40 meters and made very wide spaced elements. On 40 meters it does stretch out, so you can pretty well cover the whole band. Most wire antennas will do okay. Just simple wire antenna on 40 meters, you'll cover much of the band, but you're not covering it all. We first hit the problem at 40 meters, gets worse on 80 meters, and then on 160, it is really hard to get an antenna that has a wide bandwidth. And this is where I hear a lot of, I won't be nice, but ignorant bragging going on about, well, I got this really wide bandwidth, blah, blah, blah. And yes, you probably do, but that power's not being radiated. You're being fooled.
Now, let me stop you and throw something in. Just a couple of weeks ago, me and Jim Atkins and Gary Miller operated in the 160 contest, and we operated with 5 watts.
I'm going to talk about something.
And me and Jim used the same thing, which was Charlie back there's loop. And on mine, in order to cover the whole 160 meter band, I've got a coil system in the bottom with relays that I remotely switch, and it takes 8 positions for me to cover the whole band. I've got about 40, well, if I run much over 1.5 to 1 and do run the alpha amp and put 1500 watts out, I start getting 100 watts coupled back in, and the amp will shut down at that point. So I like to keep mine below 1.5 to 1, and so at that I have to have 8 taps across there in order to do it. Now, Gary Miller built a coaxial inverted L and put it up. And he can cover the whole band with no more than 1.7 to 1. Well, believe it or not, in the contest, it ended up, I came in 2nd place in the U.S., Gary came in 4th place, and Jim came in 5th place in the U.S. And the number of contacts we had, Gary's was actually a little better than Jim's. And it makes you wonder if all the antenna theory means anything.
I'm actually going to hit part of that because there is some absolute magic.
And with the 5 watts, I had 560 contacts. I had every state except North Dakota. I didn't get Alaska, but I almost got Hawaii, but too many people crowded him out.
Yeah.
I had 20 countries. 15 of them were in Europe.
How much power are you
5
running?
watts.
5 watts.
And
60 CW.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about specifically about 5 watts in a minute. That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it blows your mind when you get in there and do that. And I've been able to do that time and time again with just that one piece of wire. It's
yeah, and you can't.
5 watts.
But there are actually some coupling losses that you have in that matching network. They're not bad, but you actually are losing some power there. If we take a dipole antenna, and this is all I really have time to really much get into, it's about 75 ohms in free space. And that means somewhere between here and the moon. We really don't have free space. We're closer to Earth, and some of the energy gets coupled into the earth. Here we have a fairly good conductive soil in the south, which is largely red clay, iron oxide, so it actually does look a little bit like a mirror, but there are losses going on down there. And a thin wire dipole, I was rushing when I put all this stuff together, and I haven't even got to practice this presentation, but thin wire dipole really has a fairly high Q. And at 20, assuming a Q of 20 on 80 meters, you can get, with 2.62, it's 93 kilohertz up and 93 kilohertz down. That's probably about the best you can do. And if you get something that's wider than that, I don't question that you've done it, but you're losing power somewhere. Which comes up to my point. Yes, you can get some cases like this, but there are field effects like the earth, tree, metal objects in the near field, and any current that's flowing over there actually adds back to this resistor of the losses up here. You're losing that. And nearby objects will cause the bandwidth of an antenna to get wider, but it's because the power that's actually being radiated gets lower. If I could go back to that waveform, you're squashing it down and stretching it out. And trees and buildings absorb power, and that leads to a lower Q and a wider bandwidth. You want that wide bandwidth, yes, you like to have it, but it's actually a loss a lot of times. And when you get that really wide bandwidth dipole that I hear people brag about, and this has always bothered me because it's really hard to explain this quickly. But there are issues being coupled into the house, being coupled into a tree, being coupled into the earth. And I don't question on 5 watts. I've been at the beach with an 817 and a long wire that I probably got as much as 15 feet off the ground at its best, stretched out, and talked to him back here at home. And that's the power of a Christmas tree bulb. And much of it, I know much of it was being wasted. We don't have time to go into that. I simplified a lot here. If your simple wire antenna has an unusually wide bandwidth, then there are losses that you're not seeing. Really high Q antennas, and I wasn't going to cover this, but it was in the article, there are very large voltages being generated. If you have a 3-foot diameter piece of copper tubing, there's both very high currents and very, very high voltages in that. And it ends up coupling a massive amount of energy into nearby objects. It doesn't get radiated, even though you do have a very high Q. I like to end my newsletters with something that causes you to think, wow, this month there was a kid riding an alligator. I have no idea what that was about. There is a quote from Carl Sagan in Cosmos, and I've played with the physics of this. His exact quote was that all the signals that have ever been received by a radio telescope, all that energy added up is less than a single snowflake hitting the ground. And if you really want to go look into the physics, that's really true. You have to get assumptions about what is a snowflake and what it weighs and how much energy it dissipates. And a good radio, for minimum discernible signal, we got like a 1/4 microvolt coming into the radio. If you look at that in terms of watts, you probably have never heard the term femtowatts. That's next below picowatts. And the L-craft, which just blows me away, has pushed this way on down. It's actually lower than I show here. It gets down into attawatts. There is nothing right now below attawatts. There is no term for that. Main point, SWR is the ratio of impedances. The antenna, you want it to be as close to 50 ohms resistive as possible. The fact that we can use 5 watts and essentially communicate around the world blows me away. We still don't want to waste any of that power. And resonant, well-fed, well-matched antennas, without all the antenna tuners and without all the balance, are the best antennas that you can have. Yes, you can come up with all sorts of schemes to try and cover the whole band, but you're wasting power. And that took me longer than I wanted to, but that's what I wanted to cover. Questions? And Gene's going to show you some real magic. Well, actually, Doc.
But what we wanted to show you was, because a lot of new hams in here that we've got over the last year, I'd say, some of them I know have not been into radio at all, and so they've probably not put any antennas up or anything. So I thought we would show, just as an idea, some of the SWR meters from early days, if you want to call it that. Like these you usually can find at a ham fest, and they were actually made for CB, but they'll work for anything up to a point. Their sensitivity usually falls off when you get on up towards VHF to where they're not really usable. But the way you would use them.
Bye.
I had to leave you room here. Took the little 817 up, and I've got a dummy load on the top of it. But just to give you an idea as to how it would work, you would normally set those. I got to switch my power here, I believe, because I've barely got enough power output here. I may not have enough to run it at peak. Let me see. Okay, you would set it to full scale, and then you would flip it to reflected to read your reflected power, and you can see that it's pretty well 1-to-1 matched to the 50 ohm dummy load. If we hooked it to an antenna that's not matched, you would of course see whatever your SWR was on that. But this was pretty much the way the SWR meter started out, and you had to just start tuning. You would normally, if it was a 40 meter dipole you'd put up, you'd go to the bottom end and check it, top end of the band and check it, and see where it's the lowest, and then you'd start pruning your antenna to get the SWR down where you wanted it in the band. So it took a lot of steps and running back and forth. Because I can't tell you the number of times I've got frustrated and leave a low power carrier on an 80 meter dipole, and when I reach up to cut it, I forget about it, and I'll hear a sizzle, and there'll be a white spot burn on the end of my finger from it. So that's what you had to deal with. But this is the same type of meter, and it has the same type of functions with having to set it full scale and then look at the reflected. So they just came in different types of packages. And most of the time those would have a antenna jack on them that you could put a field strength readings with it, with a little whip antenna. These things came in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and this one had 3 functions. It had a power meter, and it had a modulation meter, and also an SWR meter, and it's primarily at the AM CB crowd because of the modulation meter here, but you could read your modulation percentage with it. Things kind of progressed along the different types of meters, and then this is a Kenwood watt meter, which had the ability to have 3 elements plugged into it, so you could actually have it hooked to 3 rigs, and just by flipping your switches you could look at each rig's reading, and it would show you the power out and the SWR at the same time, so you didn't have to run back and forth flipping switches and setting full scale readings and whatnot. Most of the stuff anymore, and I forgot to bring my big meter so you could see it better, but they now have the dual cross meters in them, so that they read without having to set a forward full scale and then look at the reflected. They'll have a meter that swings both ways, and where they cross is where you read your SWR. So they're pretty handy, but I brought this to show it, and that I forgot to bring the other meter. So all of them work pretty much the same way, and like Don said, the key is trying to get your SWR down. The bad thing is that you really need to be doing it on your antenna instead of at the end of 200 or 300 foot of coax. But in most cases, most people don't have that luxury. It's a lot harder to carry a transmitter out there. So what they came up with some time ago, and I'll let Doc show this while I get some of my stuff set up, but MFJ came out, and I guess they were probably one of the first ones that came out with a transmitter built in a box that could do it, so you didn't have to carry your rig out there. and it gave you the ability to look at your SWR. I have got, well, hang on, I'm going to drag the code. I don't know what all Doc was going to show on this, but at any rate, if you need this, Doc, here's, this is hooked to the tri-bander if you want to show that.
Okay.
And I'll get the DNA up and going so we can show it next.
You ready?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead. And you can kind of show them how that works.
Okay.
I think you've got the, maybe got the camera set up where you can show it with it. I'm not sure.
Being a Baptist preacher, my sermons are short. And so I always have large crowds. So we're going to show you how this thing works. By the way, how many of you ever used MFJ 259B? Anybody ever used one? Raise your hand. Okay, how many you've had the 259B? Okay, good. Well, I can't really tell you a whole lot about it then. About half of you haven't. Let me see if let me get the picture up there so you can see the screen. Let's see here. I've got so many icons on here. Better start up here.
Life cam?
Life cam.
Down one.
Down one.
To the right two.
There you go.
I think it's on. It's not at the bottom.
Is it on now?
Yeah, you just got to click the bottom. It's blinking on you.
It's not on yet. It hadn't come up yet.
It's coming.
It's coming. Just give it a time. That Adobe shouldn't be in there. Just give it a time. Here we go. Nope. What'd you do there? I don't need those forms.
I'm sorry, my bad.
Okay, let me do it.
It was that right there it is.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you. There we go. The neat thing about this is as soon as you turn it on, it automatically goes to the SWR, and I hate that it's not as clear as it should. Let me turn it on right quick. All right, there it's showing, I'm going to put the frequency. It's, what's the frequency?
I put it on 14 megahertz.
On 14?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'm running the frequency. Can you see the frequency?
Got your cables in the way.
What do we need to do?
Your cables in the projector.
Oh, that's it.
Oh.
Can you see the frequency?
I got you.
Oh, okay.
Some additional light help.
Need help there. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, very good.
All right, 14. Now there's the SWR right there, 1.5 at 14.33. Let's move on down. And it automatically reads, it's 1-to-1 at 14.054 megacycles. So that's pretty sharp. What's the next band that it works on?
15 meters.
15 meters?
Yeah, it's the tri-band.
Okay.
Go to 21.
21, right. All right, 35.
Well, since you're there, stop at 28.
Okay.
4, so. Well, there's 29, and you're already down to 1.
Yeah, already there. All right, that's pretty easy. Being retired, I just have a vertical antenna on a tripod, and I can work the world with digital PSK 31, and I use this MFJ as needed when it has the coil goes up and down. And as the coil goes up and down, I can use this to read the frequency and get my SWR, or get the SWR rather. So that's it. That's all I'm going to do with that. If you'll get me that cable over here, right over there.
But that gave you a way to set your antenna without having the transmitter on, and made life pretty simple that way.
Plug that up on the end there. Let me get this. I'll do it. You'll hold that. This is about a 30, this is just a piece of RG8, hold that, cable. And what you can do with this, most of you know, you can go here and see the coax loss. I need your light. You could put that down and put the light on there. Those hams are good at helping out here. All right, let's see. And that's at 80 meters. I'll put it on the 80 meters. Can you read that at all?
Yeah.
Okay. The dB loss.
Yeah, and that cable's 0.2 dB.
0.2 dB loss at that frequency. Let me go on up to 80 meters. There we go. The loss is 0.4 dB on this cable. All right. We go up to, let's move it on up real quick to say the 27 megacycles. The dB loss is 1.0. All right, if I use, and I have used this on 2 meters. On 2 meters, what's the
144.
144. This is what we want to show you. 144. The dB loss is what? 2.6. Wow. 2.6. If it was 3, if it showed 3 dB loss, that means if I was putting 100 watts into the antenna, I would lose 50 watts because of the dB loss. And that's why you need to have a higher velocity factor cable so you won't have the loss in dB. Does that make sense? Somebody say amen.
Amen.
Okay, we got it. I'm through.
Can you go without switching?
Yeah, well let me, I was going to make this sermon short. I don't have 440.
Oh, that don't have
it doesn't.
Oh,
I
okay.
should have bought one.
Okay.
I can also find the length of this cable, how long it is, with this meter. It may have a short in it somewhere. Some of you have some cable you bought at a Hamfest 17 years ago. It's probably got a short in it somewhere. This will find where the short is. Somebody say amen, and I'm through.
Amen.
Okay, thank you, Gene.
Now with that meter, it will find the short, but you have to do some math calculations and stuff to do it. It's not just a direct readout, and it does it. So
they do have a piece of equipment that you can actually just connect the cable to the piece of equipment, and it'll tell you how many feet down line where the short is or where the open is.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is this is kind of like a 4-man's TDR?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hopefully this
You won't need this anymore.
I was thinking about it.
Okay. Voila. Then this is the next phase of antenna analyzers, if you want to call it that. But this goes a little step further. There are several companies making things like this, and this is what Don was talking about, his $100,000 worth of equipment. This for $550 does pretty much what that does. This goes from 100 kcs up to 200 megahertz, but it has an extender now that you plug on it and it'll go up to gigahertz. So you could look at antennas all the way up through there. I just did a quick sweep while he was doing that, and instead of having to set that to the band and look at it, I can look up here and I can see every one of our SWR points on our tri-band. If I want to know what they are exactly, I can take my cursor and move it over here and read out exactly what the SWR is right there at that point, and it's 1.1 to 1. You can see your impedance is 46.4 ohms, so it's pretty slick in looking at antennas, and it takes a lot of guesswork out of it. Where with that, you would have to still, if you needed to tune an antenna, you'd have to go from the bottom of the band to the top and see what your readings were and cut and prune on it. I can put this thing in a continuous update mode, and it'll sit there, and as I'm tuning the antenna, it'll show exactly where I'm moving it and tuning it to. So it works pretty good in that respect.
So Dean,
yeah.
I think what this is showing us here is that tri-bander is not quite tuned where it ought to be.
Well, it's.
And I can tell you that
Here,
something's not
well,
right
no.
there because
Let me do this. Now we're looking at 14 megahertz. So if I go down here and just sweep 20 meters, it's going to show us. It's actually tuned low right there. You're right. Well, wait a minute. No, you're getting misled. I wanted to show you this.
There's something.
Well,
did you do the calibration?
Call me out, Dino.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to show you this program here for one reason. This mini VNA, they came out and there was 2 guys writing software for this, and this was an early version, and it will not work with the latest version and the latest calibration files. So, but the neat thing about it, if people like the MFJ so good, what this guy had done, you get your reading. Let's see if it'll just give me a low reading here. I'm going to have to go load the calibration. Hang on one second. Okay, here's our file, and it's saying it's low here, which is not right, but just bear with me. I can hit this, and voila, I've got an MFJ. But now, instead of having to figure out where the low point of SWR is, I say, show me. And so there, it's 1.07 at 13,507. So this guy had a pretty neat program, and I've kept it because I like some of the features, and I can load a certain calibration file and make it more accurate. I clicked on the wrong one, so it was off. But the latest software for this thing is... boy, it moved my stuff around. Hang on. The thing about using these little things, and I know Don will tell you this with his $10,000 equipment, if you decide you want to check 20 meters, you've got to run calibration probes through it. You have to run an open, a short, and a 50 ohm load on this port to calibrate it for each frequency you want to run test on. So I'm just doing some general stuff right here and showing you what the stuff looks like, but let me load this one, and let's try doing the sweep again. Let's see. I'm looking at different things here, so hang on, let me shut it down and bring up SWR. Okay. Now here's our SWR. Now you'll see the low point where my cursor is actually at 14,151. So, and if we go up here and click on just 14 megahertz, you can see what the sweep really is. So there's what it runs, and if I want to look at the impedance at the same time, I can with this little meter. So it'll show me both of them on the chart at the same time. I think I clicked on it.
Can you just do your calibration and just keep it on file?
Yeah, I've got them in here, and I've got some of them, but I haven't calibrated every single thing that I can do with it now. Oh, I forgot to turn on my auto scale, so it was running off the chart. Yeah. So anyway, and then with this one, I just go over here and I look for my. Well, say I wanted to know what it was at 14,150, I can click there and leave a marker, and there's what my SWR is 1.24, and I'm 49.1 ohms. So, and you can save these out and print them out. I can actually take my laptop out to the tower and be making readings, and then I'll print them out in the house because I've got wireless, and when I go back in, I've got them on the printer, so it works pretty neat.
Run 15 meters just to get
Okay, that one's pretty good. It's right in the center of the band there. It's 1.03 to 1, 50.5 ohms. So it's pretty dead on. Now,
Can you run a different frequency through it? Like, can you, for example, can you run a simulated 6 meter frequency through the antenna and see if there's a resonant point?
your SWR is 2.23 and it's 44 ohms. So it's probably to transmit on there. You get something out of it.
Use the 40 meter.
And you can go to 2 meters. Let's see what it is on 2 meters. Look at that. Good SWR. It'll work on 2 meters. So, you can actually operate 2 meters with the tri-band.
It's okay, Don. Someone paid attention to your course.
Hey, it's a perfect match. At least the radio would like it.
Explain that, Don, right quick. Largely, in this case, feed line loss.
Yeah, that's another thing that enters into this. Now let's see.
What 17 meters is?
Actually,
where's the cable dock cat?
40 meter people run this.
You still got it over there?
But it's reversed. On that course, 17 meters, it's reversed.
Because I'm going to show something with that in just a minute. Now, what? Are there any questions about any of that stuff on that? Or something somebody'd like to see? Now, this thing has all sorts of stuff you can do with it. If I want to turn this into a single generator, I can go here, and voila, I've got 2 single generators, one out each port, and I can run them in phase or out of phase and whatever dB level I'd like.
That'll really gain we're gonna put something else on. He's gonna put another antenna on.
Okay. Well, we can look at them.
This is the Dick's B&W, which is the broadband.
Oh,
DC to light. And let's just see what it.
The loss there is in ferrites.
Yes. yeah.
Yeah, because if this is
even with the losses, you're still radiating so much power, and you get so much out there. It's magic.
That's why the government puts them on all our military bases.
What do you see, Henry?
Huh?
What frequency you want to see?
I just wonder, can you go from 3 megs to 30?
100 kcs to 200 megahertz.
Well, no, you don't have to go that far.
Let me go to 198 here.
Okay, all right. But look how most of it's near 2 to 1 or under. That's scary.
Yeah, the reason this is showing up because I've got all those scale on, and if you notice the resistance here, our resistance is running from like 79 to a little less than 30 ohms, and our SWR is staying below 3 to 1 across the whole spectrum from 100 kilohertz to 200 megahertz roughly. So that's a good dummy load. But at any rate, you can sure see it. Now it does have some dips across there. Now this program won't find the lowest dip. You have to go find it yourself. But at any rate,
can you narrow it down to minimum to 30 megahertz?
Yeah. So there's from 100 kilohertz to 30 megahertz. And see, it does have some.
Is it green?
Green is your SWR.
So that's 160.
Yeah, there's 160, there's 80, there's 40, there's 20 meters.
Let's get this out.
15 is kind of toast.
This is at 1.6. If we go to 1.8, you've got a 1.08 SWR. If we go to 80 meters,
look at that.
Somewhere in here, it's 1.5. So, it's pretty good all the way across the spectrum, like you said on the
except for 15 meters. That's
well, yeah,
15.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
okay.
Well,
there's
but the theory is that the B&W says that it's going to resonate at the 40 meter point. That's what they were implying. So.
At any rate, that
the issue here on this point is that ferrites really do well matching low impedances. But when you get above 100 ohms or so, the losses start climbing. And at 600 ohms, they don't even work anymore. They don't even couple.
That unit has that in it? Is that what's in the middle of it?
Well, there's fairly high impedance points in there, and that ferrite is trying to match that. Okay. So you're heating up the ferrite as part of the process. But again, 5 watts, you can talk to other countries with a lossy antenna. It's amazing.
Okay, I'm going to do something here. I'm taking this piece of coax that Doc had, this piece of coax, and I'm going to look at it and see how long it is. And let's see, 2.5, and 8.5. So let me narrow this down here to, oops, and I got my mouse here, but let's go 8. Let me do a sweep. It likes to have just a set of these in the window. So if I go click on this, and then I go over here and put my marker on this, I can now go up here to Tools and say Cable Length. And what's the velocity factor of this, Doc?
0.66.
Okay. Let's go down here and put in 6.6. And we want to see how many feet it is, and we say measure it. And it's going to come up and tell us how many feet long it is. How many feet is it supposed to be?
It's about 40 estimated.
It says 59.88. And when I've got a 50-foot piece over there, and it shows up as 49.87 something when I measure it. So it's pretty darn accurate.
One of the things is that the velocity factor will change along the coax, too.
Yeah. And if I know the length of the coax, that's one other thing that this will do. If I know the exact length of the coax, I can plug it in up on this upper line here, and it'll show me the actual velocity factor of the cable. So, and the cables do vary quite a bit. In cutting stubs and trying to tune stubs to trap out some of my adjacent frequencies I've been trying to get rid of at home, I found out the velocity factors don't always hold true. But at any rate, that's another little thing you can do with this, which is a little easier than that. That'll do it, but you've got to sit down and run through the math to figure out the length with that, and this is kind of automatic. Now, I can also do something with this that you can't do with the MFJ, and this was what I mainly got it for originally, was so I could do this sort of stuff. I've got, well, let's use Doc's piece of cable here as an example. Say I've got this piece of cable and I wanted to use it on 2 meters, and I wanted to see what the dB loss through it was. Now, I can hook up a little short piece here and run it, but I know it's going to show you a flat line. The TLDB is the loss, or is the dB signal that this sees returning to it. It's got a transmit port and a receive port in this mode. So we're going to hook this cable up and run a sweep through it.
That loss applies to your receive signal as well.
Yeah. So if you hooked it up and you had loss at 2 meters, and we're going to sweep from 100 kilohertz to 200 megahertz. And look at this, and there's your loss going across there. Wow. And you can see we start out at 0.55 dB down here at the bottom end. And if we come on up here, and I don't know exactly what that big dip is. That's a little weird, but it's still only a dip of a dB, but it's for some reason showing a really big loss right there.
It's a notch filter.
It might be. But at at 144 megahertz, if we come across here, let me turn all this mess off down here, so it's a little easier to see. If we come across here at 144 megahertz, we can see down here that our loss is actually a little, right at 3 dB. So you're going to lose half your power, like Doc said, through this cable. So if you're putting out you put up your new 2 meter beam and you run some of this cable to it and you hook your HT up to it that's 5 watts out, you're going to get about 2.5 out the antenna. So it's it's a no-win situation. Another neat little thing you can do with this, if I can get all my cables hooked up here. Like Don was, or somebody was saying about doing the field day here, if we get everything set up with some filters, or I think it was Henry, we could probably put up quite a number of antennas here and not interfere with anything. So what this is a bandpass filter, and it's what some of the filters that I built for field day. Let's just do a quick sweep across the band here, or the whole spectrum. And if you'll look, there's the bandpass filter. It's actually, this one's actually tuned to 40 meters. And if you'll notice, the TL loss is 0.6 dB at 40 meters. And if I run it and zoom in, it'll probably be just a little less than that, because I can get on the point better. But you can see it's 50-some dB, pretty flat all the way, the rest of the way up the bands there. And up at 160 and 80, it's pretty decent too. If I go in here and sweep just 40, now we're looking over here at 0.48. So it's varying less than a dB across the whole 40-meter band. And this is something that I was experimenting with. It's not really tuned good or anything. It's a thrown together haywired mess in there actually. But give you an idea of what can be done. So the little box has got several uses and the ability to do more than just one thing with it. But and the other neat thing about it, if I decide I need to go out to the antenna with it, I'll show this real quick. I can hook up my Bluetooth thing here.
Unless I do it first.
Did you get it? I didn't know if I had it. I don't even, oh, I don't have it on, so
You don't have it on, so.
you didn't get it. Haha. Okay.
Is it first one it captures?
Well, yeah, I wanted to show this, and I was going to let you show that, but it doesn't really matter.
Go ahead, I'm just messing.
Well, I think it messed with us. Hang on. But you can hook up a Bluetooth device to your computer, or if it's got one built in it, it'll do it. Now we'd get up here to show it, and the computer's not recognizing it for some reason. Worked at home. The only thing is I've plugged the Bluetooth mouse in here now. It's probably upset all the COM port assignments. See if you can connect to it, Tim.
I've got it.
Have you?
Yep.
Okay. The other neat thing they've done with this little unit, Tim's got his Android phone. They've now got an app for it, and it'll connect right to it, and you can do all your SWR readings with it, so you don't even have to have a computer with you. So
You can take that up on the tablet.
yeah.
That's great.
So anyway, that's pretty much the
Got an
realm.
extra $500 laying around. If you got an extra $500.
Yeah, well, but like you said, if you're looking at equipment to do that sort of stuff, you can't beat it. Array Solutions has one, and it's in a metal box, but you can't run it with a Bluetooth. It's got to be hooked to a computer, and it's $1,500. So right now, this is probably the cheapest thing out there, and it's so far I've had this one and about wore the stuff off the back of it. They're using it. So
hey, Gene, what about your 2-meter antenna over here?
Don't forget to talk about that as well. About what? The generator feature.
Well, I showed that one.
Okay. Where you can use it just as a signal generator.
Yeah.
Use filter.
Yeah, and they've also added another thing to it. It says experimental, but it's a beacon mode, and you can put it on whatever frequency and have it call CQ and have it repeat ever so often, so you can use it as a beacon if you want to. So they've added that to it recently. But they're always, and the other neat thing about it is kind of like Elcraft. They make software changes. When a lot of people start saying this, they'd like to have the Android thing, then they came out with the Android app for it. So about every 3 or 4 months, they'll have another download for everybody to download new features and stuff. It's been pretty good. So I think that's. I was going to show this, but I know we're running pretty long, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay. But anyway, I was going to hook this up and show you how to tune the 2-meter antenna, and you can see the SWR change as you move these. But I think everybody pretty much gets an idea of it. But I was going to say that, you know, for putting up a dipole, it's that simple that you basically use your meter and adjust it for the lowest SWR. I can see a little bit of difference hooking it here versus on the end of the cable doing it. And also with the dipole, since I'm hooking straight from the dipole to the 50 ohm coax and I don't have a BALM or any matching network, I can actually get the best SWR if I put it in a V pattern, and it'll actually match better. So if you're looking at putting a dipole up, you might change the slope angle and change the whole characteristics of it. But at any rate, I think we'll forego that since we're running a little long. if somebody wants to see it afterwards, it'll take 2 seconds to show you and put it on 2 meters.
Thank you, all of the presenters. You did a great job. Hope everybody enjoyed that. We're trying to get a little more technical presentations that everybody can benefit from. So if you like this sort of thing, let us know so we can, incorporate more of them throughout the year. Hopefully it wasn't too far over anybody's head, and you got a good foundation and kind of understand, especially for the new hams, better what you go through setting up your antennas. It's not quite as simple as throwing a wire in the air and it works magically. There's a little work you got to do.
I'm gonna run out back.
Do we have any teaser?
I want you.
Terry?
Yeah.
Can we tease for March? Do you think
I don't
we're
see any reason why not, as far as I know it's a go.
okay? Barring any unforeseen circumstances, the March program will be a National Weather Service spotter course, the Spotter 1, the basic spotter course. So if you haven't had that before, I strongly advise you show up for the meeting, or if we can get Raymond to show up again with his schedule, log in and watch it. It's a really good course. If you have had it in the past.
It generally takes longer than the normal time allotted.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. We will make an announcement through the newsletter editor. If hopefully it's going to go through, there's a slight chance it might not, but good Lord willing, it will. We're going to start that meeting at 7 o'clock sharp. So that's going to be
Give you certification?
Say again?
Does it give you certification?
Yes, you do get the basic Skywarn spotter certification. For
And
that.
there will be a lot of people from the public.
Yeah, there'll be a whole lot of public people for that. So get here early to get a seat. That'll be a good one. If you've never had it, I strongly recommend you come and take it. If you have had it, it'll be a good refresher because we haven't done the basic in quite a while. So
The pictures are worth it.
yeah, the pictures are definitely worth coming to see.
It's amazing some of the stuff you see.
And we got one other thing we've got to do real quick before we close the meeting tonight. Bob is watching us from up north again. We're going to forgive him for that. So we need to say hi to Bob on 3. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Hi, Bob. For those of you that don't know, Bob is a member of the club who's transitioned up north to help out with some family issues. So he joins us by the interwebs. Yeah, he's actually the club's call sign trustee.
He's the one whose license gets in trouble when we do something wrong.
Yeah, when I'm operating next to the band edges, it's Bob that gets the call. So, with that, if there's no new business, if I hear any motion for anything.
Motion.
All right, seconded.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We'll see y'all next month. We'll hang around and mingle for a minute.
Зайдем и вас